And Will, do you want to tackle that middle question there about the impacts of sea temperatures, rising sea temperatures? Or Leslie?
I'll take that one.
Good.
I think the question was actually about the North Atlantic, and I don't know anything about the North Atlantic, but I'll talk about impacts a bit closer to home. One of the things that has happened in the last few decades is that one of the main currents along the east coast of Australia, the East Australian Current, which was highlighted in the Finding Nemo movie, if any of you remember that, has actually penetrated about 350 kilometres further south than it used to be. So it's bringing warmer and saltier water further south, and some of the impacts that that's having is that it's taking species that were normally just living on the New South Wales and coast around here and taking them to Tasmania. And one of the major impacts that's had is a single species of sea urchin that has shifted its range down to the kelp forests of Tasmania and is now eating those kelp forests, devastating them and severely affecting the lobster industry. So that's just one example of an impact of a change in the physical environment, shifting a single species to a place that it hasn't been before, and major flow-on effects to ecosystems down there. More generally, the world's oceans are warming up. The other thing that's happening, of course, is that they're becoming a lot more acidic because they're absorbing carbon dioxide. They're more acidic now. They're about 30% more acidic than they were in pre-industrial times, probably more acidic. Anywhere I've seen estimates from 400,000 to 25 million years. They're more acidic than that. That is already having a severe impact on many marine organisms. So, for example, we know that on parts of the Great Barrier Reef, calcification rates, that is the building of coral skeletons, has declined nearly 15% over the last few decades, presumably as a direct result of that acidity. So our marine ecosystems are being hit by several whammies, the acidification, increase in temperatures and all sorts of other changes.
There's a question up on the screen that I don't pretend to understand, but I'm sure plenty of people in the room will. I can read it out slowly for you. India already produces 25 million tonnes of steel per annum using direct reduced iron syngas as the reductant, which you can source commercially through biomass gasification. Why don't we just build that here and now and replace our outdated coal-based blast furnaces? Does anyone on the panel want to respond to that, or does the author of that want to expand on it?
Yeah, look, I can just say what I've heard from the chairman of Tata Steel, an Indian steel company, and I think they're involved with this process, is that over the next decade or so we'll see a more widespread commercialisation of that process. And I think it's my question really to the community here and the steelmakers here is are they thinking about that? I don't know the answer.
Is there anybody in the room who can talk about that? No. Who's the sprint? There's somebody here with a microphone who jogs every morning, and it's not bloody me. Okay, you go. It's you. You're the jogger. Look at her. Look at her go. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks. It's Matthew Wright from Beyond Zero Emissions. It's actually the process that BHP were trying to do part of through their hot briquetted iron factory up at Port Hedland, and they failed dismally on, and they were going to convert the Newcastle steel mill over to an arc furnace mill, and they were going to bring the briquettes of this process in and use them instead of reducing with the blast furnace and iron ore. So effectively, around the world, there's about 10% of the world's steel, I think, is through direct reduced iron, and you can actually quite efficiently create the DRI and then go straight into a hot process of rolling and so on, and it's very efficient compared to blast furnaces. A lot less energy, and so this is commercially available now. Mills operate in Japan, China, India, Venezuela, the United States, Canada, and so on. And we get told day in, day out by people like the head of the AWU, the head of BlueScope Steel, that the only way to make steel is through a coking coal blast furnace, and that's actually misleading. It's either a lie or misleading, and I think it's pretty unfortunate that we're being so grossly misled.
Anyone in the room want to comment on that at all?
Yeah. Can I just make a comment that yeah, and I'll talk in slightly more general terms, but there is a difference between building a plant from scratch today and what your legacy is, and you have a different set of decisions in business, whether you're actually starting with a greenfield site or something that's actually there today. With different technologies. So, I don't think it's quite as simple as just saying close down one plant and build another, because the circumstances may be quite different, regardless of whether the technology is there or not. So, it's not as simple as that. I think we have the same issue, I think, with our power stations. Some of our power stations are certainly not the cleanest in the world, but their legacy, and we just need to be very careful about reflecting that we wouldn't build them the way we built them then today, but they're there, and you need an additional investment to actually replace them. So it is more complex than just simply taking one thing out and putting another thing in. I'd just like to make a comment on the question the gentleman asked on or comment he made on shock. The shock of actually having a major discontinuity such as you had in this region many years ago. I come off a farm in New Zealand, and for many years after Britain joined the EEC, New Zealand's market disappeared, but we ignored it, and we just kept on spending beyond our means, and politicians kept on getting voted in on the basis that we were fine. Well, we weren't. We were going bankrupt. And then all of a sudden the government got in far too late that said, we are bankrupt, we've got to do something about it. The discontinuity that caused meant that the farm that I was brought up on that raised 6 kids all of a sudden became a quarter of an economic unit. We'd been living beyond our means for so long because we'd stuck our head in the sand. And if New Zealand had actually managed that process and seen ahead far better than it did, then New Zealand wouldn't have gone through 10 years of depression effectively through that discontinuity. So I think there is a real... but it is harder to... But
see, that requires leadership in the end, doesn't it?
That was the point I was about to make. The business analogy is when you're a successful business, it's a lot harder to keep on being successful than businesses that actually have to face a major turnaround. Handling a major turnaround is a lot easier than being...
because there is recognition among people that we've hit bottom.
It is a real issue, but there's no doubt about it that those that get in front of the game and try and build success on success rather than waiting for the proverbial to hit the fan are going to be better off in the longer term.
We have a question here. Are there any other questions in the room?